again. Subscribe to our channels. We are on YouTube. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. We will be on TikTok. And we are live tonight. Real Talk with DP and Dev is brought to you by Independent Capital Group. Independent Capital Group is a group of professionals who are there to help you with your investment needs. Not only are we there to help you with your professional needs, we're also there to help you with your credit repair. For those who are trying to buy a home, for those who just want to get their credit right, Independent Capital Group has the tools to help you do that. If your credit is already good and you're just looking to invest money that you have set aside, Independent Capital Group can help you with that and be able to give you 20% return on your investment. Yes, I said that, 20% return on your investment guaranteed. For more information about either our investment opportunities or our credit repair monitoring opportunities, go to independentcapitalatl.com. Again, it's independentcapitalatl.com. Independent Capital Group, Black owned for Black people who want to make green money. DP.
What's up, Dad?
How are you, my friend?
It's been a challenging 2 weeks, but yeah, I'm here, so you know.
Well, man, I thank you for braving through everything going on, and again, I just want to give a shout out and love to the family of Spartacus Haywood. We buried the brother a few days back. Tragic, unexpected accident happened, but we're going to continue to celebrate his life and also be there for his family. So, shout out to his family, shout out to his loved ones, and we are there for you. DP, without further ado, please introduce the wonderful guest that we have tonight.
So we had about 3 weeks ago, Madu, Randall Thomas, and another intelligent sister on, and they were going back and forth about Black history, the real story, our story, taking all the way back to Africa. And when they got done and the show ended, Madu made it clear that there's a brother and a sister that we gotta have on to continue the conversation. So he made the point that, hey, you gotta finish this conversation, or at least continue the conversation with them, because they have so much more knowledge to bring to the table that the average Black person would not do without one of you guys expressing it and sharing it with them. So, and our platform is just for that, to bridge the link between Blacks and education, Blacks and information that is not readily available.
That's right. If I'm not mistaken, I think that Dr. Bridges, before we introduce him, was a very active participant on the show that night. So
I think I was.
Yeah. So I'm actually I'm very excited about the gems.
Oh, you were the one doing the paragraphs in the comment.
Yeah, that was me. Writing dissertations. That's what I do. That's what we do.
Okay, now I know. So somebody's gonna probably return the favor.
Yeah, they probably will. They're gonna return the favor towards me, especially if
So we have two intelligent Black people, doctors, on the show, and they're going to inform us and just continue the educational process from, us in Africa, us coming to America, us being in America. So we have the beautiful sister, Dr. Alalade, also known as Dr. Bonnie Harrison, and Dr. Eric Bridges. Also, you're going to have to pronounce that one.
Ifasola, Ajiggunwa.
Okay. So I'm always interested in how, because my due name was actually Anthony Roper at one time, and now my due I'm always curious of how do you choose your names from the African heritage?
Well, hold on, before we even dive into that, because I'm actually interested in that as well. It's customary for the guests to just go ahead and do a toast. So Dr. Bridges, the floor is yours. Go ahead and raise it up. What do you want to toast to for the night before we get started?
Either one of us.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I don't have any spirits. I just have water. Water
That's fine.
That's powerful.
Yes,
so I toast to the well-being of African people, to our to our physical well-being, our financial well-being, our spiritual well-being. I give a toast to all African people all around the world.
Ashe.
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 All right.
May our path in the future be bright, that we fulfill our destinies, that we feed our ancestors,
Ashe.
and that we find love in our lives today and to come.
Yes, yes. All right, guys.
Ashe.
That's what I'm talking about. All right, let's dig in. So, as DP was asking, what is the process in terms of, the both of you coming up with the names that you have now, and as you continue to move forward in your life?
You want to go, Ifasola? Or you want me to go?
You can start first. Yeah.
Great question. What a wonderful question. So the names are acquired through the journey of what we would consider the return to our ancestral heritage and our ancestral ways. They are designations that are, you could say they're tools to help us make sure we manifest our destiny. Okay. So they may tell you a little bit about who we are, but they're usually given. You can take a name if that calls your soul. You can take a name, but these names are given, and my name is Alala de Fei Sara, and there's another part of it, but it's part of a journey given by elders. The elders give those names.
Okay.
And sometimes just like it's like so that's all it's on point. And sometimes they actually come from the spirit world too. Like it's a divination that is done. So like even people like Ifasola means Ifa brings, like when I got initiated to Ifa, the particular energy that is around me. So it's funny you all are investments because the particular Ifasola means Ifa brings wealth and abundance.
Oh yeah.
I receive all that.
Exactly. And so the names are actually praise names. So when you say someone's African or Orisha name or West African name, what happens is you literally calling on spiritual power. So it's just like it's very powerful. And then the second name, Ajiggunwa, means he who straightens character. That's what that picture you saw. That's
yeah. that's about that action.
Yeah, about the
action. Character?
Huh?
What is the name again?
It means he who straightens character.
That's what I thought you said. That's awesome. That's powerful.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's actually an Ogun name. So it's
of course, yeah.
You say the Yemonja, but my name that's an Ogun name because Ogun is close to me, and so Ogun is that's that picture. Ogun is that war man.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, even when you say it, it just sounds powerful. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And as we know, words are powerful. They can either give life or they can kill in some aspects. So, I just appreciate the knowledge that you're giving to all of us. And just so I'm level set, and some of the interviewers who may not know, we are talking about the Ifa faith as well as the Yoruba. Am I saying it correctly? Yoruba origin, Yoruba origins. Oh, man, that was rough. But I wanted to make sure that everybody's aware of that is what we're talking about when we talk about the names and the faiths and where we are really trying to talk about tonight. So again, thank you for just some of the things that you're doing and the gems that you're going to be giving us tonight.
So is Ifa and the Yoruba religion, is it two separate religions, or are they one religion a part of another bigger religion, or how does that actually break down?
I mean, people use the word loosely. It's really West African traditional religion. It's really, so people will, like over here, use interchangeably like Orisha, Ifa. And so I don't usually split hairs with it because, it's a certain level of compassion because people are still learning, and so, but it's all the same West African, primarily out of the Yoruba people.
Okay. All right.
So it's Yoruba. So the three, it's the third syllable that people usually don't hear. And then Isheshe is another term you may hear. Isheshe is sort of an encompassing term for the practice of the religion. So people practice Isheshe. So, and then also, you know, any Christian person who is of African descent in the Americas who has been in praise church is practicing, is borrowing from this tradition. Anybody who is in Islam has been exposed. That tradition has also been in close connection in the Bight of Benin for 700 more years. So these traditions know each other very well and are companions in many ways, and they take different paths eventually, often, but we don't see it that way. We recognize spirituality, and Africans are just about spirituality, and that's why you'll see us in so many different traditions, because we are looking for the spiritual connection, and we're gonna find it one way or another. That's what we're looking for. Yeah.
So when you say we're gonna find it, is that why Africans are so, or African and African Americans are so compassionate to other folks, regardless what they've done to us in the past?
What do you think? That's a Dr. Bridges question.
I mean, that's a loaded one. You know what I'm saying? I think, you know, I was having a conversation with one of my relatives yesterday, and actually the relative, I'll go ahead and say the relationship was my mother. My mother is what she calls herself a practicing Christian. And she says that because the reason why she says she's a practicing Christian, because she says sometimes Satan looks too good up front. And that's really, she says that because from a psychological perspective, from the Western perspective, I was like, that's real deep, Mom, that you say that, because like in Freudian psychology, that's the end. So sometimes you need that to step forward. So I was like, that's real deep, homegirl, that that's where you went. Like sometimes, so she says, like, but this whole notion, we were talking about how Western Christianity, European Christianity was used as a tool to make us, to oppress us. And so a lot of times I always, like I have a play cousin who is a minister. He's a minister, and he teaches from a very African paradigm, because he says all spiritual systems came out of Africa, and he's absolutely right. So I always just challenge us. It's just like my sister said, you know, at the end of the day, if those spiritualities and religions that we practice, if they don't liberate us, then we need to like really get rid of them. You know, that's the nice way of putting it, because that's what spirituality and religion is supposed to do. They're supposed to empower you, and it's supposed to liberate you. And we were given the form of Christianity that literally oppressed us, and in many instances made us passive.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to jump on that because, you know, one of the things that people often say about our traditions is that we're evil, or that we're doing things that are devil worship or other kinds of things. And you have to recognize, we have to trace that lineage back to slave masters and enslavers who were very afraid of our power and our spirituality. And they made it very clear to us that if we did practice our traditions, and if we did remember who we were, that we would pay for that, and that would be hurt for that behavior. So a lot of our traditions had to go underground, be hidden, and in doing so, we mixed with a lot of other traditions. So you will see the children of African, Native American, European culture all through this country, all through the United States, all through the world. But I think it's important to recognize, and there's the Field Museum of Natural History has an exhibit that really focuses on this question: what is it in particular about African religion that is evil? So if we ask that question, we will say, well, what is it? Is it animal sacrifice? Okay, because what religion does not do that?
Right. Exactly.
We do a lamb for Easter. We sacrifice the lamb, is, you know, in body and blood, right? That's part of an understanding of the depth of reality and of living, and the exchange of spiritual energy comes through those exchanges in every single religion. That, you know, Judaism uses, they have a ritual with that, you know, where they sacrifice live chickens. Islam has a sacrifice where they certainly to have halal. It's the same thing for us. But what happens is when you put the African label on something, then we have been taught to decide that that is evil and wrong and backwards, no matter what it is. And if it's Black, then somehow it is a force for evil. But fine, you know, they want to say they found the devil in African religions, But then if you find the devil and you're going to use that paradigm, you have to also find Jesus in our tradition. You have to also find God in our tradition. So it's not fair to say that there's something wrong, because every religion has people, and all people are, like you said, coming into their being, right? Trying to become the better selves. And so, we're not exempt from that. And tell me what religion is. Doesn't have good and bad people on different days in it, right? But our tradition, we have to uphold the Africanness, because we know it's been attacked. We know it's been denigrated, literally.
Wow. Go ahead, DP.
Now I was saying that's deep with with other religions sacrificing, but they don't actually call it a sacrifice. So that's like Thanksgiving. We sacrifice turkeys all the time.
Right. Well, and in the Bible, if you look at, there are many sacrifices that Jehovah asks of his people. People, Father, Son, but every religion has, the way you define a religion is by its practices. We pray, we sing, we ask for upliftment, we look to our religious leaders for help when we're down. It's the same thing. Again, it's just the only difference is that we have been attacked because we have the capacity to uplift and liberate, just like every other tradition. But our tradition takes us all the way home. So that means now these people have the ancestors going all the way back to the original on their side. How you gonna fight that? The only way you can do it is a misinformation campaign.
So, Cousin Bonnie, let me ask you: how do you go ahead and disseminate the information like that you just explained? You got churches, you have churches, you have mosques, you have all these different places of worship. But what do you do in terms of making people be aware of the African your African roots and heritage and just of the Ifa faith?
That's a great question. We have been hidden for so long that I think the primary way is to simply be present and to show people our character. That's the basis of the religion. As Ifasola, Ajiggunwa, to get people back on their paths and also to serve. You do not have to be in our tradition to benefit from the ancestors' wisdom. You absolutely have that option. As many traditions in Nigeria, people from every tradition come to us, come to Ifa priests, come to the priest of the different Orisha to straighten out problems and to find higher calling and find deeper understanding and explain the inexplicable, which we are African science. Science. Ogun is in some ways you can think of Ogun as gravity. It holds everything together. He owns, there's a Ogun Bogbo. He owns everything. And in some ways you could think, how are Africans going to disseminate science?
Right.
To the memories of its wise people. And what we have is a computer. Ifa is a computer. And what we do is we document, and we have a system of 16 folders where we hold ancient wisdom. I mean, this wisdom goes all the way back. And so that's what we call upon when we're asked to help solve a problem, is we have a system of accessing that computer. And so that's what we do. We help, we show, we live our truths, and we're not afraid to people who want to, call us names. I mean, we have to just lead with love and lead with awareness and consciousness of what we bring and what we're bringing back into the world.
Right. Eric, did you want to add to that? Eric, can you hear me? Did you want to add to that?
I mean, I think that sums it up. It sums up. It was something that DP said, though, that was like, it really struck me. Interesting, because so I teach a class at Clayton State called The Psychology of the African American Experience. And so for many of our students, this is like new stuff that they hear. And so it's one movie that I show. It's actually done by Jaimin Hansoon. It's called Voodoo, The Roots to Heaven. And he makes that perfect, like what DP said, like everybody talks about what we do and calls it animal sacrifice, which is erroneous. That's not what it is. It's El-Bar. But he says, like, on Thanksgiving, like millions of turkeys are slaughtered. And everybody is like really worried about what we do. And so in Africa, when an animal It's something sacred when an animal, like you've raised that animal. And so for you to sacrifice that animal, you feed the community with it, like literally. And so it's just like my sister said, you have Hasidic Jews on Wall Street. I mean, they go on in New York, y'all know, and they go and clean themselves and then give turkeys to the black community. After they done cleaned their spiritual mess off and giving it to black folks. Everybody is doing this, you know. So it is very much, when it comes to us, it's a denigration. And so it's just like the sister said, like my sister said, she, you know, you present. You back in the day, 500 years ago, you could have been like killed for this, like in Matanzas, Cuba. Back, maybe, I'm gonna be real, maybe like if I was in academia 30 years ago, I don't know if I would have told nobody I was an Orisha priest. Like, seriously. So now we have that spiritual systems globally, you know, Esheshe, Kedombre, Lokumi, or West African Orisha worship is like growing by leaps and bounds, but then still in some places, like in Brazil, like with old boy down in Brazil, the president, who they call the Trump of the South, Bolsonaro, like he's actually going at an attack against West African religions.
Oh, wow.
So we still have that going on. And so I think it's real important that we speak up. And I'm just like this. I don't have to like make nobody tolerate me. I'm gonna do what I want to do, but I think people need to know what we're doing is very important. We can't proselytize. It's not like we go out and try to get people to convert, you know, because it's all about good character. And so we represent that, because at the end of the day, people think that we worship the Orisha. We really worship good character. That's what we worship. And when people know that, then, you know, they say, oh, they some satanic devil worshipers. And that was real strategically done too, because like, you know, Haiti used the spiritual system to free themselves from the French. And so like Pat Robertson gets on whatever show he was on and says like the reason why the earthquake hit Haiti, and then the reason why the Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans is because they had a pact with the devil. And so that's a very strategic political statement he made, because
with the old white man on 700 Club.
Yeah, the old white man.
Yeah, the 700 Club.
Because I think a lot of times we forget religions are part of political systems. And Absolutely. So a lot of times under white supremacy, the Christianity, that's why folks was like trying to figure out how come all these white evangelical Christians were supporting Trump. I was just like, because they practicing white supremacy Christianity. You see what I'm saying? And so at the end of the day, you can't divorce your spiritual systems and your religions from the politics and culture. Everybody knows that. And so it's very strategic that our spiritualities were made to be seen as demonic, because those spiritualities are something that we could use to literally liberate ourselves, you know. And like, and it's true, Christians, you know, a lot of Christians, I had a great uncle who was a devout Christian, and he had a numbers house here in Atlanta. You know how folks, because that was before, you know, black people, see, y'all legit businessmen now, but you know, in order to feed your family back in the day, they were doing some stuff. And I had a great uncle, he had a numbers house and he was running some bootleg liquor. But he lived with my grandmother and my mother. And so after my grandfather got shot and killed, my uncle became my mother's like father. So he took her everywhere, and except to Louisiana. He wouldn't take her, because my grandmother would forbid him to take her to Louisiana, because he was going down to Louisiana to meet his girlfriend, who was a voodoo priestess, to get his spiritual medicine to bury in his yard, so the white cops couldn't come on his land to take his money. And so one day, my grandmother, who was a devout Christian, she was making, you know how back in the day, it's gonna sound sexist, but the woman was making the man's plate. She made my great uncle's plate and she threw it at him, the way my mother told the story. And she said, the Lord don't like what you're doing. And he said, I love the Lord with all my heart and soul, but we African, we've been working with the chicken and the foot for a long time. So you see that, you see what I'm saying? That power is still there. And if it weren't for him doing what he was doing, my family wouldn't have no money, you know, in order to survive and put their kids through college and things like that. So, yeah.
All right.
That's powerful.
Yeah. Go ahead, DP. You got some more?
You know, I know a couple of young brothers who do some illegal stuff, and they're immersed in the religion because they seem to believe that's what keeps them out of jail. You know what I'm saying? You know, and you know, people who look at them who don't know anything about religion, you know, they looking at them like you crazy. You know, I don't believe in none of that stuff, but that's because their minds are closed. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I think it's one of those things where, you know, whatever your religion is, you know, you should be mindful and respectful of somebody else's, you know, and listen, you know, and, you know, there's nothing wrong with being able to disagree on certain things if it ever comes to that, but as long as it's done respectfully, you know, and nobody is perfect. Everybody got their own vices and they got their own things that they need to work through, you know, like, you know, you got to work through your salvation, you know, you know, you hear that a lot. But, you know, my biggest thing is as long as you're able to be respectful to somebody else and, you know, keep it going, that's how things should be. Unfortunately, we live in a world where that's not the case, but, you know, that's just my take on that.
So it's interesting. With DP said that I was my students, they know what I do. And so one day I was getting ready to teach class. So this sister, she raised her hand. She said, Dr. Bridges, it's dope boys who do what you do. That's what she said. She said, it's dope boys do what you do. And for a minute, I was a little embarrassed because I'm actually embarrassed pretty easy. So I was like, it's true. And I said, but you know, with that comes, it's going to come a price because that's not good character. I'm not like judging them, but it's not good character. Then I said, no, like everybody know all religions have their elements where people are doing negative things. You know what I'm saying? All of Christianity. Like I knew one Christian minister who knew that it was plenty of drug dealers putting money in the tray. You know, everybody know that what goes on like in Islam and Judaism, you know, it's everywhere. So it's not just limited to what Orisha practitioners like do. It's people engaging in bad character and all, you know, all spiritual practices. So I don't want to forget that.
We don't refuse anybody. So I think if good character is what we worship, then at some point those young people will be guided towards the better, right, character. And so we would definitely want them to come to us and get their ancient advice because, you know, we are hard-headed. I've been told all kinds of things that I didn't listen to at first. And then I got spanked from the ancestors, you know, whooped and life. And then I go, oh, that's what you meant. Because I didn't, you know, they say you don't know what you don't know, right? But once you've been told, then it begins to transform you. Like, now I'm not doing that. I'm not supposed to eat, you know, catfish, but boy, I love me some catfish, so good. And then you know, something happens and you're like, oh, that's what they meant. That was good advice. It doesn't mean that I, you know, next time when they tell me, you know, don't steal from anybody, I'm going to listen, right? Or take care of your mama and your daddy, or make sure that the land from the family stays in the family and don't waste it. Or, you know, watch your character, watch your tongue, that all of that builds. And it's part of, you know, how lost we are, right? It's a miracle that some of us, that we're still here after what we've been through.
Preach.
You know, I tell my sister all the time, I said, I wouldn't want to be this is heroic what we have done in this country. So, you know, and like you said, we're not hating on anybody. We are on our path and on our journey, and you know, and it's all good to have these, you know, ancient spokespersons, people whose job is to speak the ancient wisdom in the modern world. What a wonderful thing to have all of this journey. You know, Africans love, like I said, we love our spirituality. So you introduce us to somebody, Jesus, who's that? What's he about? You know, oh, can he help me with this problem? That's how we move forward. And so I think it's not that, I think that we are still in this game and still using all of our spiritual tools is a wonder. And certainly Ifasola says that this religion is political. We wouldn't be here. We would not be here in this country if religion hadn't been politicized against us in the first place. The reason why Africans were allowed to be put into this position of racial slavery was the argument that something was wrong with us that we needed the support of the white man to teach us how to be Christians. This was a major lie, and I'm saying not that we, some people don't need to be Christians, but the lie that we had no religion, that we were pagan, that we were, and yes, Ifa is not pagan, right? It's a religion, a very highly organized religion, that we had nothing, and that they needed to fill us with something, is the biggest lie that was ever told. Just like they say that we are people without a morality, that we are a lazy people. We are the hardest working people in this country. We put more hours on the clock than any other ethnic group. That's why our children are running around wild, because we are at work all the time, because we have to make a living wage. We don't have it. So we got to work 2 and 3 jobs, and our side hustle, and our entrepreneurial project, and all the other things that we have to do to survive. And so our poor children, are living without, and we have pushed our elders away as well. So what are our children? Why? Of course our children are getting in trouble. And again, it's a miracle they're not getting in more trouble. I've heard people tell me, Black people are in prison because, the schools are bad. As if we need the schools to tell us to be good people. No, that comes from grandmother and grandfather and mother and father and older brother and older sister, and even our own common sense. No, we're not. We're in prison because we have been targeted for a third wave of slavery. And the drug war is all about making sure that we never get free, and that any excuse to curtail our well-being, our entrepreneurial spirit, our creativity, any excuse to extract that from us, our wealth, our power from us, that's the script of this country. So religion is no different.
Go ahead, Eric.
And that's deep, because just going back to the whole notion, going back to the idea about young brothers selling drugs, we have a lot of times, like, as I always tell people as like a psychologist, when we look at people's mental health and why they're engaging in criminality, we have to indict like white supremacy. That's not to hold people accountable, because folks should be held accountable. We have to ask the reasons why young brothers are like engaging in that. Because my whole take, I ain't never met a child that came into the world that said, I want to be a drug dealer, I want to be bad. It's the system that literally that puts that in there, that gives that's the only option many times that young brothers can do, engage in. And a lot of times we don't like it. I was watching this movie. I was showing this movie on Netflix to my students called Capital in the 21st Century. And a lot of times, like, we have been taught to like idolize wealth in the Western world. And that wealth, just like a lot of days, she said, like, that wealth in the United States, when folks go to Paris and talk about it's the most beautiful city they've ever seen, all that wealth is predicated on the work that we've done.
That's
to rich white people. And so like a lot of they were saying, when we work so much, we gotta hustle. Like, folks be taking pride in hustling. That's not a good thing, because like literally we working ourselves to death.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's literally a movement around reparations, where people talk about reparations, not only financial, but in part of our reparations, when we have to demand reparations of rest, because we tired. Like, Black people are tired. I mean, I don't care what social economic you can come from working class, you come from upper class. Black folks work very hard, and we're tired, and it's literally killing us. It literally takes time off our lives, And so
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, please finish your statement.
I was basically finished.
No, I was going to say, so what does that look like? Like that rest part that you talk about? Like, what do you, can you dive a little deeper into that?
Yeah, so we get 1 or 2 years off and still get the check, or how's that?
No. Well, I don't think that. I don't think that's DP's stuff. That's not mine. But I'm just curious to know, because you're right. Because a lot of us, we work really hard, and we really grind, and I think emotionally, physically, and spiritually, we are tired. So what does that look like to you? I pose that question to both of y'all. So what does rest, in your definition of it, looks like?
Man, rest, and I'm just talking right off the top of the head, because I really don't know. Like, even before this call, like I was teaching class. I had 2 classes to teach, Then I was doing some yoga and I fell asleep. That's how tired I was. And so, like, what does rest look like? Rest looks like it's restorative. It should be restorative. Like, what we know about the fact that we don't get enough sleep, that it literally raises our hormones like cortisol levels. And that's one of the reasons why I always tell people, one of the things, if you really want to make me upset, is if you say that African-American women are the fattest women in the United States without putting that into context. Because for the record, there's plenty of research that shows that African-American women exercise as a group more than anybody. And so, but when you look at their stress levels, sister stress levels, they always, so when your body's always going, you're going to produce stress hormones that make you hold on to weight. And so, like, it's restorative. What we know is that African Americans psychologically are the ethnic group in the United States that suffer more from nightmares, just because what we go through in the society. Like, it's hell outside, and so we go to sleep. It's hell in our sleep. So, like, you have, as a working priest, I have to literally do stuff with, like, my spiritual clients in order to get that off of them. So rest, it's physical, like you got to get a certain amount of rest, like 6 to 8 hours, but then psychological, like you have to literally tell yourself, because like you said, it was a word that you used that made me jump, like grind. Like that's what we be saying. We were like, we grinding. And grinding mean that eventually you're going to wear that stuff down. Right. It's nothing. Right. And so sometimes you literally have to just like say, I don't know. Y'all can debate this. I think it's in the Western world, we're made to feel bad if we're not doing something.
Yes.
You're right. I feel bad.
Like we literally say, like, sometimes we have to just like, even me, and I'm real good about like going to like get massages and all of that and just shutting down, but it took work. It literally took work where I'm saying I got to like not do anything. Yeah. Like literally not do anything and not feel bad about it. You know, that's a mindset that we've been given, you know. And so I don't know all the answers. I think it's a community thing. Like, what does rest mean to us as a community? What does it mean to us? What does it mean to Black men, you know, who go out and have that John Henry syndrome where they feel like, I gotta work. I'm the hardest working man. And then, you know, next thing you know, you dead at 65.
Right. No, y'all get it. You're right. I think one of the biggest things is, like you said, rest, but decompressing and really letting your mental just kind of be at peace and not quiet. Because a lot of times when we going. We got all type of things going on ahead. We're thinking about this. We're thinking about that. We're thinking about the next house you're trying to close on. We're looking at all type. You know, it's all type of. And if you got a family, you know, that adds to it as well. So, no. I understand completely where you're coming from. You know, just when you said that, it resonated with me because it's like, yeah, rest is just as important as success. If you're not able to rest, there's no way that you're going to be successful, because if you continue to go nonstop, constant, you know, you're not going to be able to function properly. So when you said that, I just want to know, you know, from your perspective, you know, what does that mean? And, you know, Cousin Bonnie, I'm going to ask you the same thing. You know, what does that mean to you?
Okay, cuz. Yes. Radical self-care.
Okay.
And so this is my blessing to hear, because I just said yesterday, I don't have anything to do. I feel upset. I need to do something. Let me do something. Mm-hmm. So this is my blessing to practice radical self-care. And radical because your society tells you that you don't deserve it and you don't need it and it's not for you and that's for other people. And so the radical act is saying, no, I do deserve a moment. I deserve a day, a week. And that doesn't mean going to Disneyland, right, and running around like a nut, but maybe just going to the lake and looking, or to doing a tree bath, walking through nature, going to a farm and planting something, or, you know, just not even turning the TV on, just sitting and meditating, of course. So radical self-care. I think that, you know, Dr. Bridges said it perfectly, beautifully. Thank you for that.
You know, the crazy thing is, before this COVID, my wife would always be like, we need to go on vacation, even if it's for the weekend. And I couldn't understand. I mean, why do we need to take a break? You know, why do we need to take a break? If we take a break, she works corporate, so if I take a break, that takes me a little bit longer to get started next week. You know, so I still don't understand it. I know I need it, but I don't understand it because if you've been taught from the time you were born that, you know, you got to work hard. You got to, regardless of what you're doing, you got to work hard. You got to be the best. You got to do this. You got to do that. Nobody ever said you got to take a break. You know, that's not part of the regiment.
You know, excuse me, I find myself, you know, me and DP are a good balance because, you know, when, you know, DP has been doing real estate investing a lot longer than I have, right? So when he's been doing it, everything is natural to him. Everything is, you know, it's like nothing because it's something that he's already used to, accustomed to doing, right? So when, you know, when I come in and I'm like, yo, man, congratulate or be happy at the fact that, you know, we're closing on a house. You know, I'm like, yo, congratulations. And he's like, what are you congratulating me for? And it's like, what do you mean? We just closing the house. That's the success. You know, you always have to be able to be mindful of those success, regardless of how long you've been doing it. And, you know, same thing with rest. Like if you continue to keep going and don't take the time to really step back and enjoy the fruits of your labor, before you know it, you're not going to be, all the fruit is going to be sour. So, you know, you got to be able to do that. So I feel like I'm here to kind of give the big fella that perspective, because if you just leave it to him, we'll be working to the bone. You know what I mean? So, and please don't get me wrong, I works. I have no problem with working, but sometimes you got to enjoy the fruits of the labor is what I'm saying.
You know, one ironic thing is the last day or two, I've been seeing these programs, and it's probably been a little news program, whereas they were talking about sleep deprivation for African Americans. You know, we're the most deprived race for sleep in, at least in the country. They may have said the world for all I know, but at least in the country. And they were talking about taking like 20-minute power naps, but it's really like 35 minutes because it takes your mind almost 15 minutes to stop racing. So you can wind down. And there's one young lady was saying that, and she was a black professor also. She was like, well, when she's watching TV at night, she falls asleep on the couch, but when she gets in the bed, she's wide awake again. And that's one problem I have. I can fall asleep on the couch, but when I get in the room, I'm like, it's going to take me another hour or two, you know, to fall asleep. And that's because the mind starts racing again about what I got to do tomorrow, what didn't I do today, what I forgot about yesterday, you know. So it's because there's always something to do, you know.
So we talk about like sleep hygiene, like in ancient Africa, they would literally have sleep temples where you would go into sleep temples. And it's actually a sister here in Atlanta. She has a whole ministry. I forget her name, but she's real big on social media called the Nap Ministry. Like that's where I got that from, that whole notion about part of our reparation should include like sleep, because we haven't slept in 400 or 500 years. African people in the United States have not had good rest since we've been here. And it's strategically done. Like you remember, I don't know, like it's a movie I will not watch again. It's several movies I'm not going to watch again. Like I'm not going to watch Precious. I can't watch it. Another movie I'm not going to watch is 12 Years a Slave. Oh, yeah. And in 12 Years a Slave, when Patsy, when the slave master is up there, he got all of the enslaved Africans lined out, and he singles out Patsy, Lupita Nyong'o's character. And I remember when I first saw her, this is a digression. I thought that she was one of the most beautiful things I had ever seen. But anyway, that's a digression. He singled her out talking about how much cotton she picked and was making all the other brothers and sisters feel bad. And so it was a scholar, economist at one of the schools up north, one of the so-called Ivy League schools. So she wanted to study the history of business in the United States. And what she found out, and it was a white woman, she had no intentions of finding this out. She found out that the whole corporate model is based on slavery. Like this whole thing about production, like what they did in 12 Years a Slave, like single her. So like, yeah, you are the worker today. You're going to get this bonus. Da, 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 da. And so everybody else is competition, and it's very much cutthroat. And the whole model is predicated on the slavery system in the United States. And this scholar had no intention of finding this out. And so that hustle and grind, that whole Gordon Gekko model, like greed is good. You know what I'm saying? All that stuff has been put into us. So we have to do a lot of deprogramming when it comes around the rest. Like everybody, all Black people got to do it. Because we tell our children, we go around telling our children stuff like, to me, and I think it's problematic. To me, I understand the logic behind it, but I'm like, why we got to tell our children, you got to be 10 times better than a white man? You know what I'm saying? And I get it. I get the logic. I get it. But then what is that? We got to counter that with something like the reason why we saying this is because you see all this white mediocrity. Like Donald Trump, he ain't even mediocre. Like his professor at the University of Pennsylvania said that this is what he said, and I can't use the full term because it's an expletive. But his professor at University of Pennsylvania said he is the dumbest MF I have ever taught. And he became president. And I'm just like, no Black man, no sister is ever gonna do that. So I get the logic. But then in the back of our mind, we gotta say, why you working for excellence? That's what we need to be saying. You working for excellence, you do self-care. Because self-care is important. Like it really is important. You if you ain't got no energy to, be excellent, then you can't be excellent.
Right. True indeed.
But how do you balance that when the goal is to make as much money as possible? You want the car, you want the house, you want this, you want that, and all of that costs. How do you balance that? And you got to get this rest, but if you get this rest, you missing out on an opportunity. So, I mean, most of us are not like the white boys when they have a trust fund or they have somebody in their family who are putting them on, that they start out in a positive position from day one. Most of us are starting from a negative position. So we don't have, in my mind now, we don't have that luxury of waiting or resting because you don't want to say grind no more since you broke it down like that. But I mean, you almost got to a certain point, and tell you, it's almost like flying an airplane. You got to expend that much fuel in order to get it to a certain altitude to make it cruise.
So, like, real quick, two things, real quick. So it's just like, on one hand, I think psychologically we got to redefine what success is, because the whole model breaking down for like middle class white folks too. Like they struggling. So we got to redefine what success is. But then on the other hand, like
before you go further, me and I know a lot of other Black folks too, we don't understand white folks struggling. You know what I'm saying? Because in my mind, I look at every white person I have a cousin, uncle, friend, or whoever that has made it, that can put them on tomorrow and change their life from being poor to at least being middle class, where they're good. They're on the path to success.
So that would lead me to point number 2. Because I ain't no fool. Like we gonna have to you gotta fight the power. That's real talk. So on one hand, you gotta rest, but you gotta fight the power. And so it's a sister that her name is Dr. Linda James Myers. She was one of the former presidents of the Association of Black Psychologists. She said something real deep. And when I heard it, blew my mind. She asked the question, what time period in the United States were Black people the healthiest? And she said, for the record, the time period we living in is one of the time periods we are the least healthiest. So the answer is the time period wherein we know through historical records wherein African Americans as a collective, we were our healthiest, was in the 60s. What were we doing in the 60s? We were protesting. We were demanding.
It was going down in the 60s.
Exactly. So in other words, and it's real, everybody know it. If you willing to stand up and fight for yourself as a collective, you gonna take care of yourself. So you gonna make sure everybody is doing everything they're supposed to do. So what we know, how many years behind economic parity? I think they say it's 228 years that it would take African Americans to catch up to economic parity with the average white person.
Wow.
And so that's not because white folks work hard. It's because they have had wealth passed down that's ill-gotten. That's what it's done. And so like I'm always big on reparations. And that's all I know is reparations. And so like, because even if you're working hard and you still behind, 228 years still is gonna take you to catch up with them. And so it's a balancing act. You got to take care of yourself, but then as a collective, we got to have that self-respect enough to demand that you're gonna make redress against us. Redress for us for the things that you've done.
Let me ask this question now. If reparation is almost like the key, we already had a black president. What white person who becomes president is going to be like, okay, we're going to support this reparation bill, or we're going to do it in an executive order and give it to black folks versus continue to give it to Egypt and Israel and all those Middle Eastern countries and, go to war over in Afghanistan and take the oil over there, or Iraq, and who's gonna be the black person that said, all right? And I truly thought Barack's second term was gonna do it. So who's gonna be the next person?
Hold on 1 second.
We're gonna do something specifically black folks.
Wait.
In the U.S. In the presidency, that even our vice president now.
All right, so before y'all answer that, I know Cousin Madu was watching. Look, man, do not. All right, listen, cuz do not tear us up. We are just asking questions.
He's heated right now. Let's talk together so you can write this paragraph.
Listen, don't tear us up, man. We just asking questions. That's it. Anyway, please, the floor is yours to the both of y'all. Bonnie, do you want to answer that first?
I do. Well, I want to just go back to something that the Baba mentioned already, which was that we have to redefine our notion of wealth, and from a sociological point of view, right, which is the sister to psychology, is we know that there's a certain amount of money that you're going to get that's going to bring you happiness and joy. And that money is like upper middle class level. Anything past that, there is actually a decline in some cases in joy. The more money you have, the more money, more problems, right? So that is something that's really important and super critical for our super entrepreneurs to recognize is, what's this money going to do? What can you buy beyond a certain level of wealth that is worth your well-being and your happiness? Because the happiness does not go. We were very happy, some of us, after the end of slavery, and we were still out of the clutches of the Jim Crow era. We were happy because we had nothing. And in fact, it was argued that Africans would never make it in a capitalist society. There's nothing wrong with capitalism, but extractive capitalism is the model of slavery. That's the model that we have to take from somebody else rather than producing our own and taking care of our resources. But extractive capitalism is the problem. Nothing wrong with the free market. And that's coming from somebody with a pretty left-wing point of view about money. But we were told that we would never make it because Africans, if you had a loaf of bread, all of us had a loaf of bread, right? And I didn't know how to save and ferret my money away, squirrel my money away, as in what's his name, Adams. And that was not our culture at all. If I had something, the whole community had something. And so we figured it out. After we gave this country $13 trillion in wealth, right? We figured out that we could still continue to give and make and create. And so, but the question is, Black boy joy, radical self-care, Black boy joy, Black girl joy, just the notion of the radical act of enjoying your life. It's a radical act of being happy. This is, if you look at, there's another way of looking at our history, in the radical act of daring to still wake up in the morning after what we've seen the night before and still get up and still enjoy the breeze and the sun and each other and Black love and creativity and future and dreaming and all of the things that make life worth living. And Ifa talks about that. Ifa talks about, having all the good things in life. Bogbo, all the good things. A Bogbo Ire is, having somebody to love, having children to remember you and look up to you, even if they're not your biological children, but giving something to the next generation and having them revere you, having good clothing. We've always been about dressing. That's not new. We brought that with us. Having a good, suit and a nice lid and having some nice shoes and being able to dress up and be good, be sharp. Good music, good food. That's our secret power, is our joy. And even when it's been attacked, because that's what they come for, and try to take into their own communities. And I shouldn't say they, because I don't believe in the they, but people who believe they're different than us, which they're not. Right. The other part of humanity, right? The other us. Right. Because, and I have to say, what were we moving the conversation into? We were talking specifically about reparations. Okay. But unless we realize that the big lie is that they're different than us, we're not going to get anywhere. I have a class where they're asking me, why is radical love? Why is that, how is that helpful? It's an institutional racism class, right? And I said, well, you got to look at the story. What was the story we were told? So the elites told us that poor white people were the enemy. And the poor white people were told that if they didn't do what the rich white people wanted them to do, the rich really wanted them to do, then they would put them back in the position that we were in at the bottom of the social ladder. And that's the script they've been working off of since 1675, Bacon's Rebellion, when we all got together and fought the rich man. And so that's what they believe. And if you look at their behavior, the behavior of those who hate us the most, that is their biggest fear, is that they will be the N-word of this country. Because they were, still are, because we were more valuable as enslaved Africans who came over here with the knowledge of how to grow cotton and corn, and indigo and rice. And we were so valuable and we were just so important. And these poor white folks didn't have nothing. Nobody even wanted them unless they just needed more hands for cotton that one time a year. And so that's how we see this, from the top, they want to extract from us, and from the bottom, or from that other community, before racism existed, before white people, the idea of white or black or race even existed, this was the script that was given to those folks. So in terms of reparations, we're owed 13 trillion. I've heard people say, there's this guy, what's his name? He's the head of the alt-right, this new alt-right thing. And he says, well, I don't even think Black people are real Americans. And I think that they should go back to Africa. And, I don't even really think that they should be given full American rights, which is hilarious. My family's been here since 1640, brother. Some people have been here longer than that. What you talking about? We came over here two generations ago?
Black dude saying
Paid for with blood, sweat, and tears. No, this is my country. This is our country. This is ours. And we're owed a debt. That's all I have to say on that.
Is that a white dude or a black dude?
I don't know what he is. I mean, there's a Cuban guy who's Afro-Cuban, Proud Boys. He's the chairman of the Proud Boys.
The chairman of the Proud Boys, yeah.
And then there's another guy he has a Latino last name, but I think I don't know. But anyway, he's confused. They're confused, but they're playing that same script. They believe that's the script that's keeping them out of the bottom. That's what they really believe. And housing discrimination, all of this stuff, all of this is really the true story of America. I don't know what they tell you in the history books, but the true story is that somebody told these white folks a lie, that we were their enemy. And in fact, we're allies. Ask Chairman Fred from Chicago. Ask him who he got together with, and why they killed him was because he was about to bring that script down with the Appalachian people from uptown, the Latino people, and the Black folks. He had all us in the same room working together. Now that's the scariest thing that this regime has ever seen, and they don't want to see that. That's why they don't like us marching in the streets together, because power is in the people are powerful, especially when we get rid of these stupid fake racial scripts. There is nothing real about race. It's like saying that a Chihuahua and a Shih Tzu are a different species. They're just dogs. They come in different shapes. White horses and black horses, they just horses. And if you believe that there's something beneath us, like CSI and Bones tells us that, oh, we can tell this is a black skeleton or this is Asian, they can't. That's a lie. That's just not science. It's just not true. You cannot tell what a skeleton is. There is no race to a skeleton. There might be little markers that come from some community or another, but they are always, you can always prove those to be wrong. I have a friend who said, oh, well, there's a little spaded tooth that Asian people have. See, this is a white dude with blonde hair who's Dutch. He said, see, I have the tooth. I was like, you just screwed up your own theory. Why do you have it? Then if you were found as a skeleton, they'd say you're Asian. So your whole theory is wrong. There is no such thing as race. But we have these very strong scripts that are holding people in these positions, in these roles. So we have to break down a lot of these lies and be brave enough to look through the script that we've been given and tell a different story.
So if rich white folks or the wealthy, the elite, the powerful white folks, and I'm gonna put powerful black folks in there too, because once once you get to a certain power level, your mind think differently. You want to keep that power, so you got to be friends with the people who keeping you in power,
Right.
who got you there. And if the poor white folks think that they're better than us, and they don't want to be where we are, so they need to make sure they're friends with the elite also. Who do we have on that side of the table that's our allies? I mean, it seems like we out here by ourselves.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I take with that particular question, like I'm a big student of Chairman Fred Hampton. And I also think too, we have to realize that it's historical grievances and redress that have to be addressed by, on all levels of people that have suffered. So United States is a multicultural nation. But we do know the way the erroneous script about race is written. It's like literally, if you go to London, you would hear it's a nursery rhyme wherein people, like my grandparents used to say, if you black, you get back. If you brown, you stick around. If you yellow, you're mellow. If you white, you all right. Everybody knows that particular hierarchical script wherein people of African descent with dark skin are put at the bottom. And so like literally you have to literally challenge those notions. And I think it is, I say this because I know when I take those racial identity tests, I fall in the black nationalist category. It is. But I have had graduate students that were white. And I tell them straight up, it ain't my job to go out there and educate your people about what this is, how this is your job to do that. Like it is literally your job to do that. I tell my colleagues, my white colleagues, I'm not here to teach you about race. You all know it. It is your job to literally go back into these communities with white people and do this work and tell them about this system. And I think a lot of times, the expectation is, like it's all lollygag, it's all like, kumbaya. We have real systemic problems that are based upon that erroneous assumption of race. Now, is race biologically correct? No, it's not. But is it a socio-political entity? It very much is. And at the bottom of the total pole are Black people. And so we really have to address that level. And so I think a lot of times, like I'm not gonna lie, a lot of times I challenge multiculturalism because multiculturalism does not go as far as addressing those systemic inequalities that have been played out. So if someone is sick, if something like we living through COVID now during a pandemic, and you got people on ventilators, and you want to make sure that they are taken care of first. You see what I'm saying? As opposed to the people who have milder symptoms. So it's that whole scenario in the mind. Like Black folks are literally like Black folks and Native Americans always at the bottom of every indice in all categories. You have to take care of that and then so that has to be dealt with and said many times, and people can't be afraid to say that. Does that make some kind of like monster or prejudice? No, but you gotta like literally speak truth to power. Because I sit in meetings wherein people will try to play that game, and I have seen literally the people at the bottom, their needs are not taken care of. Their needs are not taken care of. So, like, yeah, at the end of the day, long story short, my white colleagues, my white brothers and sisters who about liberation, you got to go in those communities and do that work with your people.
Ashe. That's powerful. Yes.
Let me ask this other question now. This may get everybody in an uproar, but let me ask this question. and this has been a question of mine for a long time, and nobody has been able to realistically, logically answer it. If Black folks have to deal and work through so much, is the whole race of Black folks, are we a cursed culture because we always gotta go above and beyond to get to the bottom or the middle, versus other cultures, they could start out in the middle or at least at zero? You know what I'm saying? We got to do so much to get anything versus everyone else in the world, as far as I know. I mean, there's some third world countries that they are what they are. But where we are in America, I mean, it's almost pitiful. I mean, I think now the whole world organization is seeing that how white folks are, at least America is treating the Black folks. It's a worldwide crisis now at some level, but at the same token, they're not giving out worldwide aid to help assist in the crisis. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So were we cursed? I mean,
no, we're not cursed. We are not at all. It's the opposite. We are the ones with the riches. And so in order to take that from us, there had to be a concerted program, a plan. And so you have to understand that the richest man on earth is still Mansa Musa at 400 billion.
Yep.
500 years later, 600, 700 years later, since 1325, that brother's still. And do you know, okay, here's some Native American from my ancestors who are on that side. This is little brother is still trying to catch up with us. The white man is little brother. He came last in terms of the evolution of evolution is not the word I want to use. In terms of civilization, Africa was at its height in the medieval period. Mansa Musa 1325, he crashed the price of gold in Africa and the rest of the world because he dropped $1 million in tips in gold. And so that was what got the attention of the Europeans. Why? Because they were poor. They was poor. They was dying from the plague. They didn't have nothing. You needed to have an African, a Greek, and a Jew in your court just to have some civilization at that time. If you were a king or a queen, you needed help. They didn't have, I mean, the computers we're talking on now are based on the digital system that comes out of West Africa, the geomancy that was documented and stored at the Oxford Library. It's Oxford University in the 1400s. And every mathematician from that point on has studied, major mathematician has had access to that information. The system of zeros and ones, that's Ifa, period. So they came to get our stuff, our money, our food, our wisdom, our knowledge. You can't grow cotton in Europe. You have to get people who know how to grow that stuff.
Let me not go back to all the way to Africa, but once slavery brought us into the United States from that point.
Well, that was what brought us here, was that they wanted the wealth that we had, right? And since then, you have to okay, it's a 3-part system. First, we're going to get Africans because they don't speak English and they can't join with these other these indentured servants to rebel. So the Africans are far away from home. They're the most vulnerable. There's a market for them because the African kings were fighting amongst themselves. Let's go get them. And that's how we're going to build a society. And then we're going to create a reason for them to stay in this position. In 1640, a brother runs away with two white guys, a Dutch guy and a Scottish guy. His name was John Punch. And they caught them. They gave everybody 30 lashes, but they told the brother that he was going to stay in slavery in perpetuity. That's the first legal case of slavery in the United States. And so it's always been through the courts and through the sociological belief. We have to enslave these people because they're pagans and they're lazy, which is the furthest from the truth, as we've discussed. And then you fight a war. 1 million people are sacrificed in a war called the Civil War to end this system. Well, as one reason is to end the system. And so it takes about 20 years during Reconstruction. We get Black people in Congress, Black people senators. And then they have to come up with a new system, and it's called convict labor. Angola in Louisiana is still going, right? It's a system where any excuse that a Black person does something, if a brown skin and curly hair, you do anything wrong, and we can make it up if we feel like it. We're going to put you back in a labor camp so you can work for us for what? For free. And then we brought that system down. In 1964 Civil Rights Act, we brought that system down, and it took them about 20 years to come up with the war on drugs. Yeah. And that system gives you any excuse to put a Black man away, pull him away from his family for 5 joints for 50 years. That's a case, right? 5 joints. Brother goes down for 50 years, 6 videotapes out of a store. Mm-hmm. Marijuana's not even, it's legal in Chicago. Sorry, guys, but it's legal here because it's not even as bad as alcohol or tobacco. And so any excuse to keep you under the thumb. But the reality is all of that hypocrisy will destroy this nation. And at some point, this nation will have to face that or just not exist. It cannot stand. Exactly. It cannot stand. This is a lie upon a lie upon a lie upon a lie. And I don't worry when people say, oh, these white supremacists are getting together and organizing themselves, because inevitably they destroy each other. They're violent and hateful and not grounded in reality. And yes, we suffer through this war. It's a war. It's a war for the soul of a people. And yes, everybody gets hurt in war, even the innocent. And so, yeah, until they figure out that it's actually in everybody's best interest to cut it out and to change the script and stop trying. Because we just rise again, right? Ogun gets back up, Shango gets back up, Wokabiesi gets back up and fights the war, right? He fights and fights and fights. And Shango, Oshun, Oya is the most powerful Orisha. She fights and fights, and we will continue to fight. Even as we're dying now, we have a new generation that's about to be born to push this to the next level and to save this planet. So we don't die. We can't. But they're trying very hard to supplant us and to put, we are the kings and queens of the earth. Yeah. And they want our position. That's younger brother. He's just fighting for that top spot and do anything, even destroy his own well-being in order to get us. What do you think happened to those young people who saw people being lynched and castrated? What do you think happens in their homes to people who act in that manner? To police officers who shoot people on the street? What happens to their spirit, their soul, even their family members? How do they treat their wives and children? Do you think they're not without suffering? I'm not saying that that it's fine the way it is. No, it's la luta continua. We have to continue to push forward and move forward and liberate all of humanity. But in particular, as brother said, our community.
Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of times I think we have this notion that we curse, and I tend to look at things very pragmatic and strategic. So down here in Atlanta, it's I would take my students over to the National Archives. So we have National Archives, and I do that real strategic because you have to hit people here. Like when you teach people, people think you teaching this, but you got to hit them here. So I would take my students over to the National Archives, and I would let them look at the slave manifest. The first time I saw it, so it was a gentleman, I'll call his name because he did a lot of good. It was a European-American gentleman. His name was Joel Walker. He's retired. He was an educational specialist at the National Archives here in Atlanta, which is based in near Clayton State. And he brought me back into the area that's closed off, and he pulled out one of the slave manifests, and he turned to a page, and on that page there was the names of African people who were after the United States had outlawed slavery. So people were still transporting enslaved Africans throughout the United States. And it was two documents that really stuck out in my mind. The first one was prior to the outlawing of slavery, wherein this one ship's captain, in beautiful cursive, I mean, the penmanship was stunning. He said, when you go into Africa, you go into the West Africa, you go into the Congo region, you get very handsome boys and voluptuous girls. That's what he said. I saw it with my own eyes. So I started getting angry and I started tearing up. So Joe was like, okay, I know I'm the representation of this man. I said, I was just like, so strategically, he said, strategically what they did is that they went in and took children out of the continent before. So we started this conversation talking about African spirituality. They took the children out between the ages of 12 and 33. You ain't fully developed between 12, especially between 12 and 18. They took children out because children are vulnerable. Like when you look at the slave manifest and you see the ages, you see stuff like 12, 13. So we need to know that we're not cursed. We were literally children taken out from our homes. So Walter Rodney wrote this one book called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And he said, like at that particular point in time in history for 500 years, 25, this is approximation, like 25% of the people out of the continent were taken off the continent. And most of them were children. So we need to recognize that because you on that slave plantation and you've been taken from your parents and your uncles and aunts and back in Africa, those are your formative years. That stuff is strategic. It has nothing to do with a curse. That's what people do in war. They do that strategically. It has nothing to do with a spiritual curse. And then the thing that really made me so emotional was that it was I think it was in 1840, and it was a young woman. Her name was Azalea. She was 12 years old. So you know how in the Black community we got this thing about skin complexion, like high yellow, blue black, and all that. So I always wondered where that came from. And on the slave manifest, it was there, like high. They was describing our ancestors as high yellow, blue black. I saw it with my own eyes. But one young sister, she was being sold from a plantation in Florida to South Carolina, and her skin complexion was described as real high yellow. So I looked at Joel. I said, "What's up with this?" He said, "This is going to really make you upset." He said she was 12 years old. She was being sold to a plantation out in Charleston, and the man who sold her plantation owner, was more than likely her father. And so that's why she was so light-skinned. So when people talk about like African-American men being deadbeat fathers, which is not true, because I did that research and we found out African-American men are African-American and Latino males are some of the most nurturing fathers around. The original, like as Francis Wellesley used to talk about, the original founding fathers were these slave plantation owners, literally making babies and selling them. That's the kind of like insanity. So like when my sister talk about this stuff gonna fall because white supremacy is ultimately genocidal. It's like literally, I sit back and I watch that stuff on January the 6th, and I'm like, these people are insane. Like, anybody with any sense would know that you got to bring everybody up in humanity. And I just end with this. It was interesting. I remember when President Obama was really working hard. One of the things, because I know me and DP kind of critical President Obama, but when he was working real hard on the Affordable Care Act, and I remember I was listening to Tell Me More a radio show that was on NPR that was done by Michelle Martin. And she had this white dude from Alabama who had like stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And he didn't have any insurance. And so she was saying, how you feel about the Affordable Care Act? And he asked this question, no lie, right hand to Older DeMar. He said, is this going to help Black people? And so she said, well, it's going to help everybody. But he said, is it going to help Black people? And she said, I guess it's going to help a lot of Black people. He said, well, I don't want it. And she said, but you don't have insurance and you got stage 4 cancer. And he said, I'm just willing to die if I know it's going to help Black people.
Wow.
I was done. I was like, dealing with it. Like, you literally willing to die because you don't want somebody that you've been taught to hate to have a good life and good health care. That is the insanity of it all.
Yeah. That's crazy, right? Yeah. Beyond our outdoors, but when you've been taught that, I mean, it's in your DNA, basically. Let me ask this question, and this more of a current event than the past event, but I really want to get you guys' take on it. Meghan Markle in the interview with Oprah Winfrey, when the staff and the family, the Queen and their folks, they're being racist and not as polite that she would think that would be to her, having once you have if you got any percentage of Black in you, it's a Black child. That's what they consider the child, a Black child. But my question is, and I've talked to a couple of people, and they were like, they couldn't believe it, and I was like, what was she expecting to happen? There was like, ain't other Black folks over there in that castle, so not have any position. So you're gonna have this Black child who possibly could be a king or or prince, and you're gonna ruin their she's about to ruin the dynasty. You know what I'm saying? If they have a Black king over there, really, that'll be a whole down. It'll go downhill quick.
Why they? I want to know why they allowed him to marry her, and they're very. I don't want to say Kabbalistic, but they use a lot of different craft, if you will. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Yeah. So they're not. They pretend to be one thing, but they're quite something else. And I'm not talking about lizard people, but.
But we needed to go ahead and say it.
There's something they use the arts, right? They use the different witchcraft or different things like that, and that's very different than. There are places for that, and there are people who practice, what we call manipulative sorcery magic, and who are taking. Right, it's right. It follows the same pattern that we're talking about of extractive capitalism. It's taking that which does not belong to you and that you have not earned, but manipulating the energy so that you can get something that doesn't belong to you. It's immoral. It's unethical, and that's what why you have a priesthood, because so part of what we do is we are clear about those kinds of ethical and moral questions. That's very much part of what we do. We ask for help and we ask for spiritual and divine energy, but we also have to make sure that it's used properly. We talked about this earlier, and that people are not going to misalign themselves. So I'm just very curious about what she saw, or what she was advised, that allowed the Queen to allow her son to marry a woman of color. And I think probably it might have something to do with their longevity. And at some point they're so related that I think they need those infusions from outside. And I'm sure the Queen is aware of her, she's probably has a long-term plan, and knows that this world is going to change, and that it may be tough right now, but having that, she has Queen Charlotte in her lineage. I don't know if you know, Charlotte is a Portuguese Moorish princess who, if you see her, she looked like my sister, okay? She's light-skinned, or she looked like my daughter. She's light-skinned, but she's definitely a woman who has been described as of African descent. Genetically, she's been described. And the queen had to apologize for that lineage in her when she was inaugurated. And she had to basically use it as a reason for being able to rule over so many different kinds of people in Africa and the Caribbean and the Pacific Islands. So they said, look, we are legitimately, ennobled of these people. And
there's reports and articles that talks about the first Black Queen of Britain. And they refer to Queen Charlotte.
Lately, I've seen, it's interesting how people can wage war on information, because I've seen that retracted lately. I don't know if you've been seeing that, but they're like, oh, no, that's not really true. So It's really interesting how they're playing with the story. But I'm sure there's a reason, and this is all a drama. I never believe what I see. What's really going on underneath the surface is probably some deep planning, and that I just worry about them manipulating the public and because their population believes something very similar. I mean, I was in England. I spent some time in England, and they insulted me for having too much education. Like, oh, how many degrees do you have then? You got what, 2 PhDs? Because Nigerians be getting these 3 or 4 degrees, and in fact, one of my teachers does have 2 PhDs. But anyway. So, they have a very interesting, it's not the same kind of denigration of us that you see here, but they still have this hierarchy, as Baba said. And so, I don't know. I think that it's a show. I'm not that interested in that show because, we got problems here. But, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think she's playing a role. I think she's an actress. I don't know. How are you guys? Like the Duchess wore the black head there was an event where she wore a pin.
I remember that.
I was telling you then, we think of you as an N-word, but Meghan Markle. I mean, have you seen this woman? She married a prince. I mean, come on, get over it, girl. Get over it. It's all good. You left them people. You over here now. You told on them. They in trouble now. You got your revenge. Good. Black girl magic. Let's go. Let's move on. Next.
The firm. I mean, it's called a firm, and they about brilliant. They brilliant because there's no other royal family in Europe. Like all the rest of their cousins done got jobs and stuff. All the other royal families across Europe, they know how to change with the times straight up. And I didn't think about it. A lot of that they probably doing some witchcraft, but it make perfect sense because they straight brilliant. They are the only European royal house that's still standing, and no one knows exactly what they do. Then it's straight brilliant, and so they know how to change with the times. They keep it up, and so like they've had to negotiate. The present queen, Elizabeth, she was not supposed to be sitting on the throne. It was her uncle originally, and he was supposed to sit on the throne, and then he abdicated to marry a woman, an American divorcee, and they moved to France and started hanging out with the Nazis. Yeah. And people don't talk about that a lot. They start hanging out with the Nazis, and Queen Elizabeth's mother is mad at her brother-in-law because she feels like that when her husband had to take the throne, that her brother-in-law was not bound to duty, and that killed her husband. So that family is very strategic. So when Charles divorced Diana, and knowing that he was supposed to sit on the throne, they like, how are we gonna deal with this? So then they say, all right, we can accept it. So then Harry falls in love with a sister, and they like, all right, so we got to figure out. But that was a little bit different because then then he went real far. He done went and got a sister. I don't care how light
American, and she's of color. Oh,
and then her mama live in Compton and is a yoga instructor. So they got all this stuff going on. They like, what in the world is going on? How we negotiated? And then the sister gonna come and she just gonna tell everything. And I ain't gonna lie, I laughed because I was just like, I want to see. I was like, how they gonna negotiate this? Because I don't think it's no comeback. I don't think it's no comeback now. And so it is I ain't gonna lie. They about brilliant when it comes to like reinventing themselves, but I don't know if they're gonna be able to do it now. I really don't.
The queen was the innocent here, and the queen is the one who came out 2 days later, which is unheard of, and said, "I condemn whatever happened." So the queen comes out smelling like a rose in this because she came to her rescue, Meghan's rescue. So yeah, like you said, they know what they're doing. They ain't no joke.
And I ain't gonna lie. I watched The Crown on Netflix, and I literally had sympathy for Queen Elizabeth because I was just like, here was a woman. She was like, I'm gonna do this because I'm supposed to. And I think the propaganda. I think The Crown is a beautiful piece of propaganda. It really is, because you start sympathizing with Queen Elizabeth. Then when she did that, you like, oh. And even Meghan said, I ain't never had no problem with old girl. You know, I ain't never had.
Stupid. She's been on that throne, what, 70 years? How long? 60 years?
Like, wait a minute. I ain't trying to go up against that. So it's man, but I ain't gonna lie. One of my weaknesses, I love The Crown, and I would watch every episode, and I know everything about that royal family. So
I'm with you on that.
That's good, man. DP, you got any more questions?
No, but one thing. So
Okay.
you think that she just didn't want to bring the queen out, or she just
I think the queen is cleaning house. Is what I think she's doing. I think she's cleaning house. No, this is all the queen. I'm convinced. I watched too much of The Crown, so I'm convinced that this is because they specifically said it's not the queen who's doing this.
Yeah, I've never watched it, but I do know that The Crown is award winning.
You have to watch The Crown. That stuff, like it is crazy brilliant. It's the acting. The direct, it's just one of the best series I have ever seen.
Let me ask y'all this.
Can't wait to see the future queen with Miss Meghan in it. Okay.
I don't have time to watch The Crown when y'all reading these books. Y'all in the
radical self-care, radical self-love, and relaxation.
And y'all got to get 8 hours of sleep.
9. I don't play with that's my fancy. They better not wake me up.
You got a little more running around over there about to tear the house out.
Right, but it's like, for example, the new Jim Crow. I highly recommend it. It lays out the whole story of America and where we are now and what we have to fight and what we have to struggle against to get our brothers out of the prison industrial complex. That's why we teach, because this is our job. So I admire you all. I'm gonna contact y'all. I'm gonna buy a house in Chicago. Another house. I have a farm, but just making it my job. Yeah, I have a farm, a 6-acre farm, and across from my grandfather's 40 acres that he bought in 1938. I just bought the property. Me and my husband bought the property. Yes.
Now y'all just told us that we need to slow down, don't do as much.
Right.
But you got it all over there.
I got goats and chickens. Well, one goat. You got to get a good team. I mean, your team, you can't do it all. It's your team. So we have a team member who goes out there and takes care of it, and I work, I'm a professor, so I only work 8 months out of the, it's a gig, y'all. 8 months out of the year and 4 months of mine.
What school are you a professor at? I'm
at Kennedy King College, which is the number 8 community college in the country.
Nice.
What's up?
How can they before we wrap up, I want the people to know how to find you. So Cousin Bonnie, you go first. How can people find you? Are you on Instagram? Are you on Facebook? Your emails.
You can find me under Alalade Feyisara, which is F-I-I-S-A-R-A. Sorry.
How do you spell that?
Alalade, A-L-A-L-A-D-E, and then Feyisara, F-E-Y-I-S-A-R-A. And that's my Facebook. You can find me under Bonnie C. Harrison or Bonnie. I'm named after Bonnie and Clyde, so it's easy to find me. Bonnie Claudia Harrison. And
you spell them right. I'm trying to get the names. A-L-A-D-E F-A-Y
F-E-Y-I-S-A-R-A. And I'm Bonnie. Sorry, A-L-A-L-A-D-E.
Yeah.
F as in Frank, E as in elephant, Y as in yellow, I as in igloo, S as in Sam, A as in alphabet, R as in rabbit, and A as in alphabet.
There you go.
And Bonnie C. Harrison at Gmail is my email. No dot after the C. It's just one word, Bonnie C. Harrison. And I'm a professor. You can just Google my name, Bonnie C. Harrison. And just like my brother here, we have publications out there, and find us. And I'd love to talk, and I'd love to come back and visit you guys again.
Oh, we would love to have you again. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
I can't get my eyelashes though. Next time I'm gonna get some eyelashes first.
That's fine. Go ahead and get your face beat. It's all good. Do your thing. Brother Eric, how can people find you?
So on Facebook, so the name Ifasola Ajiggunwa, then Eric Bridges. All four of the names, but Ifasola Ajiggunwa comes first, then comes Eric Bridges. No slash. So Ifasola Ajiggunwa, Eric Bridges on Facebook. On Instagram, it's just Ifasola bottom slash Ajiggunwa. And then on Twitter, it is Dr. Eric M. Bridges. So yeah, so I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Nice. And for those who don't know, Dr. Bridges does have a book, Recovering the African Feminine Divine in Literature, the Arts, and Practice. So go ahead and give a quick rundown and quick synopsis of that, please, my friend.
This was like, this is my baby here. So I co-edited this book. Two of my colleagues, Warren Simpson Wilkie, who's at Kennesaw State, and then Sheila McCoy Smith. So what we did was we did an examination. We had contributors do an examination of the Orisha Yemonja, who is one of the major African goddesses in the Yoruba pantheon. And so we looked at Yemonja as from the perspective of practicing priests. So I wrote a chapter, and then one of my god sisters wrote a chapter, and then this young brother who's actually studying dreams for his PhD, he wrote a chapter, and then we have a section that deals with art and literature. So we explore this African divine feminine, because many times I think in the West, we don't really address the feminine divine. We think about the divine as masculine and not seeing the importance and relevance, particularly African divine feminine. And it has ramifications for how we live our lives, as far as how we relate to each other based on gender. And gender is very complex. So that's what the book deals with. It's called Recovering the African Feminine Divine in Literature, the Arts, and Practice, Yemonja Awakening. So it's just like this reawakening of the African divine feminine.
Love it. Thank you, man. DP, what you got for the people before we wrap?
Yeah, I'm impressed by these minds we got on here today, man. We got some brilliant minds on there.
I want to come back.
Yeah, we want to have you back. There was a lot of gems, a lot of things that I definitely want to take advantage of, especially going to the National Archive. As a matter of fact, Brother Eric, man, when I'm down in that area of Clayton, I may just reach out to see if you're available, man, so we can chop it up in person and then.
How you mean when you down there? You don't live far from there. Yeah, you like 10 minutes, Playboy.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying. But when I am around that area, I want to make sure I take advantage of that, because I didn't know that. To be honest, I didn't know that it was that close to Clayton State. So
neither.
I need to be there. That's one of the things I wrote down.
My niece goes to Clayton State too. Melody Collins.
Oh, is that your book, Cousin Bonnie? Talk about it.
I'm in the book. Just about, we talked about New York earlier, and I've been holding my tongue on this, because the Harlem Renaissance gets a lot of play, right. But there were Renaissances everywhere all over the United States, because Black people were rising and still are. And so we have been writing about the Black Chicago Renaissance, where everybody from the Harlem Renaissance either came from or came back to Chicago after the Depression. So Archibald Motley, he's from 60th Street in Inglewood, brothers. And he was the first Black artist to show at the Harlem Renaissance. But he's always lived in Chicago. So I write about him in this book, and just talking a little bit about the roots from Frederick Douglass at the World's Fair all the way to what becomes the Black Chicago Renaissance, which they argue is still going on in Chicago. Sun Ra, and the names could go on and on and on. Everybody was here. Louis Armstrong, everybody was here.
I love
So,
it.
I can take a picture of it.
Yeah.
DP, go ahead and put it in the chat box too for the people. It's the roots of the Black Chicago Renaissance.
It's a wonderful volume. And I'm on Free and Black at Twitter as well. I forgot about that one.
Yep, we got you on there. You're good to go. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead, DP.
Of the Black Chicago Renaissance?
Yeah, I wrote it. Yeah, it's the yes. It's
How do you spell Renaissance? I'm not a
it's RENAISSANCE.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm a numbers person too. Spelling, I have to work on that. I'm a numbers person too.
Yeah. Ain't no spell check on this.
Thank you, brothers. I really appreciated that. That was a wonderful experience.
No, we are blessed to be in your presence, and we thank you for the gems that you gave us, and the beautiful history lesson as well.
Before we close out, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, shout out to the big cousin, Maldu, who's on here. So look, before we go, for those who are on, thank you again for joining us. Thank you for listening as we did. I hope y'all learned something. I know DP and I have learned a lot tonight.
Yeah.
Again, subscribe to our channels. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. For those who are interested in investing, go to independentcapitalatl.com. Again, that's independentcapitalatl.com. And before we leave, as I always say, in everything that you do with positivity, creativity, and authenticity. This is Real Talk with DP and Dev, and peace, beautiful people.